It's great to be here. I'm Seema Bhangar. I lead the health discipline for the US Green Building Council, and I got my start in the fields of public health and indoor air quality right here at UC Berkeley more than 20 years ago. So it's a real pleasure. It's an especial pleasure and honor to be back here as a research affiliate to the Center for Built Environment to share a work that we conducted in collaboration with this community on driving action on indoor air monitoring in commercial buildings. And this study encapsulates a little bit or demonstrates why I joined USGBC as someone who spent most of her career in research, which is I was really attracted to the incredible influence and reach the organization has for scaling innovation in the built environment. And the best part of my job there is the chance to bring that platform to make it available to researchers through the kind of study I'm going to share, to extend that reach to all of you. So this is the report published earlier this year. You can access it through the QR code. And very grateful to our co-authors from Center for Built Environment. We have Toby Kramer. Toby, can you wave? Yeah, there's Toby, and then others from other research institutions, EPFL and University of Sydney. And I'll start with the why. Why do we care about this? Why did we want to drive monitoring of indoor air? So we know, I think at this point, it's very well established. It's not controversial at all that clean air is essential, not just for health, but also for productivity and comfort. And we also know that building owners and operators already, under conventional practice, invest pretty significant resources. The amount of investment ranges, but nevertheless, in practices, design and operation practices to assure and achieve clean air. So these include design of ventilation and filtration systems, building envelope design, sourcing practices. However, it is not yet standard practice to verify clean air performance and to proactively check if all the design measures, all the investment is working as intended through the service life of the building. And that through the service life of the building is really the key part. We all know a lot of conditions change externally and within the building, and are the things that we did to achieve air delivering what we invested in them for. And one more note on the kind of why of this study. So as low-cost sensors, we've seen them emerge in the market over the last decade, and they've made monitoring cheaper and more accessible. And the demand for clean air has risen, in tandem with that emergence of new technology. In part, it got a stimulus through the COVID-19 pandemic, through wildfire smoke becoming more prevalent. And so the idea of evoking more proactive, performance-based approaches to manage indoor air quality have started to seem to many as perhaps a natural next step or an attractive next step. And that's really what we set out, why we embarked on this study, to investigate the state of market demand and readiness for what many have started to predict will constitute the next big shift in indoor air quality management in commercial buildings. So the study goals, our study design was somewhat unique, maybe an outlier among the research studies you'll see presented here today. The output was a report published by USGBC, so we felt free from conventional requirements of research methods. And so what we set out to do was really present this critical review and commentary on the maturity of the science and technology, not just the science and technology, but also the standards and policy and the market for commercial IAQ monitoring. And so we approached this through targeted deep dive interviews with 24 leading experts. Obviously there are many other leading experts, so not trying to claim some sort of a monopoly on leading experts, and plus an additional 10. So we had 34 total, distributed across the sectors shown in this pie chart, to and all are acknowledged by name in the report. And then there are some here in this community, so I'll call them out as well, and they can wave. We have Shonao D, thank you for participating. Eric Sun, I believe Liz Vandermark is here. I believe Renji Chan is not here, although she's part of this community. We had someone from TRC who's here, although Alex is not here, who supported us. And what we did was ask each of them, a set of standard questions, of 7 questions, really designed to elucidate where is the ecosystem at, where could it most fruitfully go, and most importantly, what collective action is needed to get us there. And the reason that's of interest to USGBC is that we're in a position to then drive some of that action. And we were especially interested in identifying areas where better alignment among experts and leaders, either within or between sectors, might smooth the way for implementers by reducing uncertainty risk and kind of implementation confusion. So here's a summary of the 7 questions. And for the rest of this presentation, I'll share key findings from each one. And although in the interest of time, I'll skip the 6th on the market readiness for scaling indoor air monitoring from air quality to the other environmental parameters. And for each one, I'll present some quotes to convey the richness and diversity of views firsthand. I won't have time to talk you through them, but you'll see them up there on the screen while I talk you through really the key takeaways per question, which are pulled out as areas where there was consensus, there was agreement sufficient to drive action now, so that we don't come away with this idea. We appreciate both the range in views, but then also the readiness to move forward and progress this area of implementation and innovation in our industry. And so the first question was, how big of an opportunity are indoor air quality sensors? And note, we were really looking here for the perspective of that individual. And experts generally agreed that sensors present a significant opportunity to improve not just the health of occupants, but also business outcomes for the commercial facility engaging in the monitoring. And those benefits can range from the marketability of the asset, its durability, operational efficiency, and others are listed. And we had a researcher, Dr. Lydia Morawska, who said, we have to use stronger words. It's not an opportunity, but a necessity. So that was kind of bookended one range of the views. And then many acknowledged that in practice, while in theory the value is very high, in practice, realized value has trailed expectations and pointed at many reasons for that. And one of the reasons flagged by several people was this issue of split incentives and the challenge of that. And overall, strengthening both the health and business case for monitoring air by integrating and analyzing combining the right data sets, sort of to point at Charlie's work, not just in lab and chamber scale, but doing it where it's really hard to do from the real life implementation was flagged as a really opportune area where progress could then unlock a lot of implementation progress for the industry. The second question, how should implementers develop a strategic plan for sensor implementation? The importance of integrating sensors into organizational objectives, programs, and workflows instead of implementing them as standalone efforts was emphasized by everyone who had experience in real-world environments. So not to be underemphasized, Johan Gensel here from Vasa Kronen really elaborated on that in his quote on the importance of fitting into business objectives. So it's not a one-off pilot that yields some results and then is abandoned. And the advice was that the important thing is to stop assuming, really the important thing is to stop assuming that design is going to work as intended, where indoor air quality is concerned. And so to start somewhere, once you assume that, then you need to check operational performance. And while continuous monitoring, 24/7 with sensors are, again, bookend one type of monitoring and verification, there are many steps, many rungs on the ladder toward that endpoint. And so that ladder was mapped, and suggestions were made for where every single building, no matter how resource strapped, could start somewhere on the journey towards operational verification. So I'm skipping over some of the content on temporal and spatial variability. There was some really rich content that suggested future research, but just in the interest of time, trying to wrap up in 2 minutes here. So I'll just give you a few more highlights. So slide here, question 3 and 4 were what should be measured, how, when, where, how often. Some takeaways here was that there's a pretty consistent set of big 5 parameters that are most commonly measured. And of these, CO2 was listed as the no-brainer, must-do, and then PM was usually next in line, particulate matter, and TVOCs were the most controversial. Those are the volatile organics. And in terms of the question of how important is it, the device that I select, can I just buy any device off Amazon or in the market? The general takeaway was that though the underlying sensor components tend to be pretty common across devices, that the way that they're assembled and all the firmware and the implementation results in a really differentiated market for the final assembled devices. So careful vetting of your device does matter. And then the lack of authoritative protocols and requirements that help people select the right device and vet them was stated as a really critical gap that, if addressed, could unlock progress. And the key word there is really authoritative. There are a lot of guidelines, or a few, for how to choose, or I would even say many, for how to choose sensing devices, how to vet them, but they all many of them, they're not consistent with each other, and there's not an aligned, harmonized approach in the industry. And to cover 2 more, so the question of whether sensor data quality is sufficient under current technology and how data should be interpreted was a really hot topic. Everyone agreed that sensor data are good enough for basic applications, for raising awareness, for analyzing trends, and for guiding, certain other actions. But beyond that, the upshot was that implementers need access to more, again, the keyword was authoritative, authoritative tools for data interpretation, data benchmarking, and to guide action loops. So that was flagged as a key action. And then finally, this question of can the data be a liability? So while the current lack of regulation means nobody was concerned about liability in a legal sense, experts offered copious tips on planning for potential public relations, media, reputational, not just risks, but also opportunities, and then also for addressing data security, privacy, access, ownership issues. So a nice cheat sheet there of how to do this in a way that is safe and secure for organizations. And overall, the recommendation was to start the journey now. The advice was that although there is there are a few emerging, but regulations requiring sensing at present, that the trend, it looks like they will start to emerge. They've already started to emerge in Europe and in Australia, sort of ahead of the pack on that. And so starting now, before it's actually required, allows implementers to get ready, to start developing the communication protocols, the management plans. So with that, I'll just close by sharing that a common thread that came through was that progress will require coordinated, collaborative action across those stakeholder groups that were represented in our interviewee pool. And in a moment of fortuitous timing for the release of our study, Climate Week in New York City last month featured a high-profile global call to action for healthy indoor air. And this QR code will send you to a recorded webinar briefing that we hosted on the event, which has really served as appears like it'll serve as a rallying cry and coalition building platform that I'm hoping we can then use to drive action on all those key action points flagged throughout this presentation and in the report. And we're excited as USGBC to work with all the other players in our sector of the standards world IWBI, UL, the Center for Active Design, RESET, to do a better job creating authoritative guidance that is harmonized, and to working with researchers, implementers, manufacturers to kind of pull this progress in this ecosystem together. So please join one of our breakout groups. It's table number 1, easy to remember, to learn more about these developments and what collaborations we can launch. So